Hi, I'm Dr. Teresa Penbrook. I'm the Director of the Healthy Communities Research Group for GP Red and the CEO and founder of Greenplay LLC. Coming up, we have a very special conversation summary that is from the GP Red think tank that took place in November 2020. This conversation was a summary facilitated by Brian Cates from Colorado Springs Parks and Recreation around the changing perceptions of law enforcement and recreation. I hope you stay to the end because I think you'll find it very meaningful, as I did. Please like and subscribe to this channel so that we can continue to bring you great conversations like this. Enjoy.
I'm Officer Adam Mentor. I would like to introduce my Sergeant Jason Newton. Real quick intro. I've been on 7 years, all patrol, pretty much all night shift. And now I'm the Community Relations Officer with Colorado Springs Police. Sarge?
Yeah, thank you. And so I'm Jason Newton. I'm a police sergeant for the Colorado Springs Police Department. I've been on 17 years. I was a cop in Portland, Oregon prior to coming here. I am passionate about community relations in Portland and in here, and actually has brought this program, different types of programs to schools around the state and the city that we'll talk about. A unique thing is I also teach kids and officers mindfulness. And really connecting through mindfulness and meditation and really building strong bonds to that. So it's kind of a unique program that we have here, but we'll talk a little bit more about that as Officer Mentor goes through our presentation.
First question, why sports and rec to build trust between the community and the PD? So obviously this is what we're going to talk about. To start this, I think, they say a picture, says 1,000 words. So I'm going to show you this. This is a group of kids in one of our local anti-gang programs, okay? We partner with a nonprofit. Through one of our groups, we actually donated to get these kids up skiing in Colorado. These kids have never skied before. And these kids, most of them, this group is actually located in pretty much what we would consider stereotypically our rougher part of town, the highest amount of violent crime, et cetera. So this is the kids before they went on the trip, okay? 24 hours later, these kids turned into this. And this is one of my favorite little changes because deep down, we're all just a bunch of kids that just want to play, okay? And it took getting these kids out of the neighborhood, just in type of some physical interaction, they turned into that, which is one of my favorite pictures I've ever had. So let me move real quick. A lot of these are things we all know, so I'm gonna go through them as quick as I can. We believe sports and rec are some of the few activities that can actually bring people together from different backgrounds, languages, etc. I think we all know that exercise of any form has the similar effect of an antidepressant in the brain. And we also feel that just playing with no other motives, just playing shows someone's humanity, okay? So our goal with this, with having police interact with Parks and Rec and athletics and exercise, things like that, kind of like what Brian was saying before, to increase non-criminal, non-confrontational interactions between the public and the police. And we feel little by little, that's where trust develops. So let me move to the next slide. So now I'm going to kind of explain what we're doing, what we're trying to get off the ground, what we have done. So right now I'm partnering with a local boxing gym, boxing and MMA, which is of course extremely popular right now. And the goal is when cops are meeting kids on the street, maybe a kid that needs a different, maybe some guidance, maybe an outlet for anger or aggression, we're referring them to this program. And the program is extremely pro-police and wanting police there. So I've been there, I'm training there, meeting the kids there. And I'm, again, as Brian talked about, in street clothes. I'm not in uniform. So I'm just going there boxing and they're getting to know me. So this was my little passion project for a while before I came up to this position. So these are kids from a local community center. And kind of also, as Brian was talking about, what I did is I went there off duty, out of uniform. So to kind of break down that barrier, because when a lot of people see someone in uniform, there's definitely a barrier. We understand that. So the two left pictures, I would go there out of uniform. They called me Mr. Adam. That was my name when I went there. And they started to build have them get to know me. And little by little, it came out what I did, my job. They start to ask questions, and then it turns into the picture on the right, where they know me enough and trust me enough to just hop on the back of a bike while I'm in uniform. So that was a lot of fun. Please ignore the fact that we're not wearing helmets. This is the next little passion project that I'm trying to get going. The goal is to have sports equipment, footballs, basketballs, whatever, in cop cars, so cops have the ability to just give those out to kids in the neighborhood. And we have to be realistic about the time frame that cops have. Cops don't have often, especially in a busy city. We got 500,000 people in the city. So if they don't necessarily have 10, 15 minutes. Maybe they have 10, 15 seconds or a minute. If just that little interaction is enough to have a quick, positive interaction with the kids, that's what we're going for. So real quick wrap up, it's a time efficient way for cops to interact with the community in a positive way. Can be done in just a few seconds, which me coming from 7 years of night shift in this city, in arguably the busiest part of town, is all we really have sometimes. And here's the big part. I know it worked for me. I know Sarge agrees. Those positive interactions, just a non-confrontational, non-criminal interaction with the public, that helps cops so much. That helps our mental health. It's kind of like a reset, and kind of gets us back to not just focusing on the negative, but it gets us ready for that next call and realizes there's a lot of positive out there. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce Chief McSwain with Montgomery County Parks. Take it away, Chief.
All right, thank you, Adam. I appreciate it. I bring all of you greetings from the wonderful state of Maryland, Montgomery County to be specific. We have about 1 million people. And those slides bring back memories for me because as a young rookie about 30 years ago, give or take, I remember getting out of my car and just simply shooting basketball with the kids in the neighborhood. Eventually working with community leaders to develop summer basketball leagues and mentoring programs, working with gang prevention and also school resource members as well. One of the things I have found as an executive, and I understand we may have some decision makers here on this Zoom discussion, is that good ideas are worthless if there's no corresponding action to help them make them possible. And for motivated members like Brian and Adam, who are at the front line, they need our support to ensure that we have sustained programming for sustained success. So I certainly, first of all, encourage all of decision makers to be proactive in reaching out to your colleagues in the respective agency to initiate the discussion. We want to ensure that those motivated officers or recreation members or others have the appropriate support that they need to actually carry out the programs. Adam kind of mentioned that some officers only have a few seconds. Well, a motivated chief can make time to ensure that they actually have some schedule adjustments and changes for sustained programming. Secondly, it's so very important as well that one consider gaining political support as well from both the executive and legislative branch in your respective region. One of the things that one will find when getting into programming, especially as it grows, is that they all require resources. Sometimes they require money, sometimes they require location, sometimes they require legislative support. And also ideas can include things such as local grants that the respective local government can provide for evidence-based programming, line item budgets, and or assistance with advertising for both mainstream and marginalized communities. So that could be putting certain publications in different languages, but also putting them on public transportation and other places to be able to advertise it. And then third, one of the things I've always found is that whether it's police work and recreation or vice versa, there are other nonprofits that can also help to complement the efforts that you all may engage in, especially in the areas of preventive and also restorative justice initiatives. So for example, one of the worst places for a child to be if they're suspended from school is at home for 10 straight days without any adult supervision. So perhaps a recreation center and or joint program with the local police can also help to not only ensure that they keep their educational pursuits up so that they don't fall further behind, but also so that they don't engage in other negative activity, if you will, that can further hamper their future. And/or vulnerable populations, such as those who may have youth with autism. I have found parents are very reluctant if they have children who may have autism or some other challenge to interact with other children. So perhaps there can be a day to set aside just for those who have autistic children or adults with Alzheimer's, etc. So again, collectively working together with government agencies and also nonprofits can make a huge difference for the entire community. I would tell you from a agency standpoint, there are two camps, if you will, as it relates to how they're coping with it, meaning the officers. For those who've been around for a while, we remember the Rodney King incident, unfortunately, and a few other more infamous incidents, and understand the ebbs and flows of public sentiment based upon a horrific incident. I can tell you that I have not found an officer who agreed with what happened with George Floyd. It literally brought tears to most people's eyes who are basic human beings. And that's the vast majority of them. For some of the vitriol that they have seen or heard from certain community members, it has caused some to question whether or not they want to continue in public safety. It has caused some to question whether or not the decades of outreach and good work they've done really meant anything. And so for us who are in executive positions, I've literally gone to roll calls to say, hey, I want you to keep your head up. Because what I know for a fact is that the vast majority of community members respect and appreciate you. There is a vocal minority, but also this is a great opportunity for every agency to ask themselves, how do we get better? Because for certain things that have occurred that simply weren't consistent with being a professional, they need to change attitudes and some other things as well. So it's forced a discussion. For the young officers who haven't lived through it, it has been terrifying for them to hear some of the vitriol. I've literally gone to roll calls where there was a complaint or a challenge of officers literally in tears, afraid to go out and to do their job, so to speak. So we've had to kind of calm their fears down, reorient them, because if I say something like 9/11 or anything like that, the young officers don't know what I'm talking about because they were literally just children at that time. So that's one of the challenges that we're facing, but it's forcing us now to have more of a regular discussion, not take anything for granted with the communities. So all across this nation, you hear of reimagining community groups that are being developed, where police and the community are coming together to say, hey, how do we fix anything that needs to be developed and or improve on some other things as well. So I'll kick it off to Jason if he wants to share from a supervisory standpoint also.
As Chief says, the fear from our side, but then I also feel like, is that fear, it's one of those things like, is that really reality, or we're getting caught up in that vocal minority? So I'll tell you a little story. My brother is a chief of police at Iowa State University. Him and I are very passionate about changing the perception of law enforcement. He's been in it for 20 plus years, and this is my 17th. We don't get a choice in law enforcement at times to make a statement on things or to show our vulnerable side or to grieve. George Floyd changed that a little bit. You saw chiefs coming out and denouncing that, and sometimes because we want to make sure the facts are gathered, right? We didn't need any more information. They did not see him as a human being. Doesn't matter what happened after that. You didn't see him as a human. I don't want my cops to do that. We have to transition and see people, even the people we arrest. Right? And oddly enough, just a side note, I was with my cadets the other day and we were selling canine calendars. If you guys want to buy a canine calendar, go to our website. You can purchase them. And a guy that was in prison twice came up to us and was kind of yelling at us and mad at us. And it's hard for 14, 15-year-old kids, right? They're cadets in uniforms, and I'm outside of my uniform. And he was mad at us, the police. But he ended up buying a calendar after I talked to him. You know why he bought a calendar? He's like, I've been in prison twice, but every time I deserved it, and you never. And I said, sir, did we treat you fairly? He's like, you were always respectful to me. You should have seen my kids, my cadets. It blew their mind. But that just shows how we can change this, and we have to get that. So now going back to the George Floyd incident. I was with protesters when our protest started here, and there were several of the protesters I've known for years in the Black community that were really hurting, and I saw their pain. And they asked me if I would kneel with them and pray and come together, and I did. I made that decision. That decision was not very popular to some people in our community because they felt like I was pandering. So I got heat from officers. They said I was anti-cop. I was pandering to the protesters. I got heat from protesters saying you don't really truly mean it. And I was not passionate. And sorry, I'm an emotional being. So, I felt like race relations was on my shoulders at that time because I'm seen as this white officer, right? I go out there, and I didn't know how to get beyond it, except I knew when I was in the moment with those protesters, I knew they were hurting. That's why I knelt. And I had, yes, IA investigations filed by other officers because they didn't feel it was right. But I would do it in a heartbeat again. And my brother did it as well as a chief. You know why? Because that was a moment we need to be uncomfortable. We need to show our community that we're there for them. And those were our people in our community, that were grieving and struggling at that time. And maybe we didn't have that negative interaction, but there is that reality out there, right? A man has lost his life at the hands of police. And if we don't acknowledge that, and so it's very challenging because no matter what we do right now, it feels like if I walked with the protesters, which I did, I worked 13 hours with those protesters, by the way, and not once, a group of 500 people, did I have any issues. And I had one guy come up and start yelling at me, and guess who surrounded me? A group of Black leaders in our community, young kids that I knew, that said, do not do this to Jason. This is Jason. So they have already seen beyond my uniform just from that. And it wasn't just that one act. I've been playing basketball and doing that for years with them. But it's so challenging for us. And I just want people to know and to share this with our communities is that we really, truly do care. And I heard this great quote last night, and it really means a lot. It meant a lot to me last night. I heard it. It says, if you sit at my table and eat with me, you will know who I am. And that's what we need to do as law enforcement, is sit at the table. And that's what I did in that moment, right? I knelt with them people, and I felt that pain and that passion. And they're not anti-police. They just want good police. They just want good people that they know. So it's a challenge. These deaths are hard. Every time something happens, I cringe. And then I look at it, and a lot of times people are like, why aren't the cops commenting? Because we can't. We're not allowed to. We're not allowed to make statements. I did, and I think it was the right thing to do, and I would do it in a heartbeat again. But I think that's what we need to be moving forward. And now that's where the fear comes in, right? This is a dangerous time in our society. We've seen this. When we move forward, great conversations are happening, but guess what? It's really uncomfortable. So what do? We go to our own corners. Ferguson, we saw that. We started making some changes, and guess what? Law enforcement went to their corner, communities went to their corner, and we kind of like put a little barricade up, and we wouldn't come out because it's just comfortable. And guess what? We forget, and we move on. And then something else happens, and then something else happens. And finally, there's a breaking point. And so I don't want that fear. I teach my cops, I'm like, you can't have that fear. Most people want to just know who you are. And if you show them that you truly care, we can break down those barriers.